Welcome to the Women Leaders Association podcast, where we believe we go further, faster, and have more fun when we go together. Be sure to tune in each week to hear an empowering message from the world's top women executives, trailblazers, entrepreneurs, and all around fierce female leaders. I'm your host, Julianne Kirkland, and I will be taking you on a deep dive of each message to equip you with the principles, strategies, and tools you need to start crushing your goals, increasing your impact, creating work-life harmony, and did I mention have more fun? Because when you love what you do it better. The Women Leaders Association is the world's largest women executives association with over 30,000 women in executive and leadership positions who are committed to the development and advancement of women in the corporate arena. If you would like to get involved in a Women Leaders Association chapter, would enjoy daily podcasts, or you desire to become a part of the Women's Mastermind group near you, simply go to womenleaderspodcast.com. Now let's tune in for this incredible message. On today's episode, hear from Becky Stroll. Becky is an established editor, writer, and marketing expert with over 10 years of experience helping businesses and professionals reach new heights. She's helped companies across industries increase revenue from nonprofits to multi-billion-dollar enterprises. Welcome, Becky. Hey, welcome back to the Women Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Julianne Kirkland, and I'm so excited Becky's with us today. Welcome, Becky.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here, Julianne.
Absolutely. So Becky is an expert in one of my most favorite topics that I feel like if everybody could get this one thing, like in all areas of their life, it would improve dramatically, and that is communication. So Becky, how did you get into this field in the first place? How did you become an expert? How, Becky, how?
Well, I have always been an avid reader and writer. I love that growing up. And then I found that every company I worked for in different roles to begin with, I always ended up doing all of their communications, their writing, their marketing. And that is so important for a lot of small businesses who are growing. They need somebody who can convey their message across different channels in blog posts, social media, and different places like that. So I realized I had a knack for that and I could help people out. So I started my own business about 6 years ago, Alpha Moose Writing, and I've been helping people with their communications and messaging and marketing ever since. It's been a wonderful journey, and I really do love helping small businesses grow.
I love that. And again, getting the messaging right
Yes.
is, I mean, it's a lifeline, especially for businesses trying to get off the ground. And, we're spending so much money in marketing and advertising, like all these different things. But if we're confusing our audience, if we're not communicating our message clearly, then we're not landing the plane and we're not able to make sales. And then we get frustrated and all of those things that are going on. So what are some of the key aspects that you look at when you begin to work with somebody?
Absolutely. So it's, everybody who's starting their own business is clearly talented in some area, but they might not, just be able to word their message the right way and consistently across different channels. So the two big areas that I really focus on when I'm helping a new client is clarity and empathy, which I think honestly can be translated to communications across your personal life, your professional life, everywhere, but it definitely applies in marketing and branding. So clarity, that a lot of people want to over explain, but short, succinct communications and marketing is really the best way to get your message across clearly. And then being sincere and transparent is also really helpful because people want to connect with you. But if you're not really like conveying yourself through your marketing, then that is a missed opportunity. And then for empathy, it's a lot about client understanding, making sure you are listening to what your clients and customers need, understanding what they might need from you, what are the best channels and ways to reach them, leading with positive, finding a solution to their problem first. So those two kind of go hand in hand with marketing, I feel, and that is a big area where we start with clients is trying to make sure that they have understood their audience and that they have a clear, concise message that we can then, translate to different channels like social media or content creation, things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it goes, I know, most of the people listening right now are taking it in for their business. And at the same time, ladies, like this matters so much too. Again, in every single relationship that you have. My kids are on a swim team, and me and a friend of mine were talking about like, oh, they've grown so much, but because of the scale that happened, the communication drops significantly. And that really has hindered a lot of the swimmers from progressing and being able to grow and then to scale even more into next year. And we're like, communication is key. And so that's the thing of like, no matter what
Yeah.
you're in, right? Communication, being able to speak clearly, understand what you desire to say, right?
Mhm,
And then
mhm.
speaking it out clearly so that other people understand what you're trying to say. And those really are kind of two different things in a lot of times, right? We
Absolutely.
think we understand it because we know all the ins and outs about it. But there's times where, especially when you're just starting out, where you are so far ahead of where that client is sitting. They're still sitting in this pain, this not knowing, this needing help. And we're like, we have all the solutions in the world. But if we can't go back and speak to them when they're in that moment, again, we're missing that opportunity.
Absolutely. And I think so many of us, I mean, we make it through life, right? We all know how to communicate on a basic level, but we take it for granted that that's enough. And so I think it is a skill just like any other that you need to hone and get better at, not only to convey your message correctly, because we sometimes think we're communicating something that we're not, and that they're not picking it up, but also to make sure that listening is the other half of that part of it, of combining your clear messaging with somebody else's needs and how those two align.
Yeah, and it's that old adage, a confused mind does nothing,
Right.
right? And that happens so frequently in all aspects of business. If we are confusing because on Instagram we're putting this message out, and then on Facebook it looks like this, and then on our website it looks a little bit like this. People are like, "Wait, I thought you did, but you actually do, but now you do," and they're confused and they don't know who to
Right.
go to.
Absolutely. I have a couple clients who love different ventures, and so they have multiple different brands. We have to be very strategic and careful about how we're communicating that so that it doesn't get muddied and it doesn't get confusing for the clients. We want to make sure it's part of her umbrella brand and it's clear what each role does, and making sure that that messaging is consistent, which is a big part of the clarity part. Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So for that woman who is just starting out and they're like, "Oh gosh, well, how do I know exactly what I want to say? I think I know what I want to say. I think I'm being clear, but obviously I'm not because my sales aren't where they want to be." So what are like a few steps to get her started and what she should be thinking about before she even comes to you and you're like, "Okay, so."
Absolutely. So there's a couple questions one should ask oneself, when you're starting your business, and write down the answers too. Don't just kind of think about it, but actually put it on paper. Why are you doing this? What makes you happy about what you're doing? And what do you hope to achieve with your business? What are you trying to make happen? And this kind of ties a little bit into your mission statement eventually, but it also kind of brings back to your brand voice, and what you are trying to achieve with the brand. And then that will kind of define the messaging and marketing later on.
Mhm.
That should be very, very strong. And that's one thing that when I do meet with new entrepreneurs, they might be, a lot of them are surprised that I'm even asking those questions and they don't really know an answer. So it's a good exercise for them to really understand, where you're coming from and why you want to start this business. Put it on paper, get it, get the thoughts flowing. And make sure it's really clear for yourself where you're going to go from here, because that will be the foundation of everything you do, from marketing all the way to your business operations and other scalable enterprises too. So that's the first step, is really digging deep personally into how and why you want your brand to take off.
And I love that. Where do you want to go from here? Again, I think so often, many entrepreneurs are big dreamers, right? We're highly
Hmm.
ambitious and we're high achievers. And so sometimes we're jumping to that next thing before we've even taken the time to really solidify what we've already put into place. And so when you're talking about brand voice, I think that happens so frequently where that kind of gets, like you were saying, muddied, right? And
Hmm.
where people, again, think that they're being clear, but because they're jumping onto the next thing and then the next thing and then that, it's hard to kind of, okay, take a step back. Let's get back to the basics. Why are you doing this? What do you love about it? And where do you want to go from here? And really getting that clear and having the client, the person that you're working with, be able to voice that is huge, right? Because
Absolutely.
again, so often we keep things up in our head and just crazy things can go on up there.
Absolutely. And it's a subtle transition, but a viewer or an audience member or customer can definitely tell through your communications when the leadership isn't really clear on what their future goals are, or they're really not clear on who they are. That's something that kind of comes through in, very generic professional type messaging instead of something that has a lot of personality or sincerity in it. And they don't, maybe they're not as clear about where they're going with the brand. And so the potential customer can pick up on that. They might not be able to, consciously know, okay, they don't know what they're doing, but they do decide whether or not they connect with that brand. And that's where that's the crux of the whole thing. We want to make sure that that potential customer buys into you, wants to start with you, wants to do business with you. So, yeah, they can pick up on that. And that's why the communications are so important.
Yes, absolutely. So what are some of your favorite either topics or victories or anything like that that you've experienced over the past 10 years and helping people to really hone in their communications? What's something that you're like, oh, this is my absolute favorite part?
I love it when we see a lot of engagement in whatever channel we're working on. So, for example, I have one client right now who's doing great on social media and they just started, but they already had this community, this tight-knit community of people that were already following their store and wanted to come see them and kind of, it's a smaller town in Tennessee. So they were already kind of had a nice community and they had this untapped potential that was just sitting there. So we started working with social media and really finding their clients where they were. And that has been such a success for them in reaching out and connecting that community in a better way. So sometimes it's not a matter of building something, it's a matter of retaining the community that you already have and communicating well to make sure that your messaging is coming across even to current customers and your current communities. That's wonderful. I also love it when the client themselves, the entrepreneur that I work with has feels like their message is really out there, that like they put their trust in me to this is what I want to do, this is what I'm trying to do, and they don't really know how to say it. And I will put the messaging together for them, and their website will be finished or their blog post, and they will be like, that is exactly what I was going for. How did you read my mind? So that is one of my skills, is being able to kind of read between the lines of what they're saying and get at the heart of who they are and what their brand is. And it can be a really beautiful process to kind of bring that out and really shine a light on who they are. So that is a very amazing part of what I do for me. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's the perfect ghostwriter, right?
Hmm.
It's so cool to me how ghostwriters work and they really get to know you and hear your voice, and then they can transmute that into the book that they're writing, for you. I think that is, I don't think they're called ghostwriters anymore. They probably have a much better name, but that's what I remember them as.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely a fun part of my job is helping someone move along and feel confident in who they are and how they're getting connecting with their customers. Definitely.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, Becky, what is like one last piece of advice that you can think of again to that woman who's like, okay, I'm doing it. I'm going to ask myself these questions. Where am I at? Who's my audience? Where do I want to go? What would be the piece of advice that you would give to the person who is sitting there trying to work through all these questions and they're like, wait a second, my audience is everyone. I
Mm.
want to serve everyone. Because that's a very common goal for entrepreneurs. I'm going to serve everybody. So, what piece of advice would you give to her?
Absolutely. I love that because that's kind of my problem too. When I started, I was like, well, I want to help everybody with their businesses. And that can certainly be your target demographic or your target audience in general. But for messaging, thinking about how to phrase something or how to get your messaging across, it's still really helpful to just think of one person. Even if it's not necessarily like for me, for example, I'm going to think of that female entrepreneur who's struggling with the messaging, writing, and who needs that support. And so even if, maybe I serve males as well, and maybe not entrepreneurs, maybe professionals, it's still important to kind of think in your mind of that one person because that will help you communicate more clearly and persuasively and sincerely to that person. So it doesn't get too generic and too, okay, professionalese. It's more like, let me help you for these reasons because I know you're struggling here. And that can kind of help you target your market a little bit better and connect with your reader or viewer a lot better too.
Yes. Oh, that's so great. That's so great. And it is so important because again, we have the heart to help, right? And we're like, well, we can help everybody, but I really can help everybody. And yet, and yet we need to speak to that one person that we're kind of holding as our ideal
client.
Yeah, and don't let perfection get in the way of progress. Even if maybe you don't have the budget to bring on a copywriter like myself, you can still get your message across. Just be succinct, be clear, be sincere about what you're trying to do, and you'll make the connections you need to grow and go from there. So don't worry too much about, maybe, oh, I know there's a typo on my website. As long as you're really conveying who you are and what you're trying to do, you'll get there eventually. Yeah.
So good, Becky. Okay, so where can our audience connect with you? Where do you hang out on?
Absolutely. So my website is alphamoosewriting.com. You can check out my portfolio. You can see the services I offer. You can also email me directly at becky@alphamoosewriting.com. I'm happy to connect.
Awesome. We love it. Becky, thank you so much. And if you are looking for more stories just like this, be sure to visit womenleaderspodcast.com. Thanks for now. Bye-bye.